from Vida Consultancy, and we're talking about the fact that, not that she looks it, Rachel's actually pregnant. So we're going to be talking about juggling, being an entrepreneur and a mum at the same time. So Rachel, we obviously got one on the way, but you've got a son who's almost 2.
Yes, he'll be 2 in 2 months' time.
So what stage was your business at when you got pregnant?
The business was 4 years old. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think when I set the business up, it was partly inspired on me thinking ahead. Mm-hmm. I think I was 30 or 31 at the time, and had just met my partner, who I'm still with now. But just thought, with relationships, etc., and I'm probably going to be between the ages of 35 and 40 wanting to start a family. So let's, if I'm going to do this business thing, just let's do it now and get it out of the way. And then I can dedicate a good 3 or 4 years to getting things set up and established, and then start thinking about a family after that. And it actually, pretty much happened in the time scale that I had anticipated.
That's really nice planning.
Yeah, worked out quite well.
Well, and I suppose actually that's a really nice position, isn't it? 4 years in, you've got through all the teething problems. Hopefully the business wasn't at too stressful a point that you could then take a step away. I mean, in terms of obviously, maternity leave, and it is your first baby almost, your company. How did you find that? How was it hard to take that step away?
Yeah, I have to be honest, I was petrified. It all worked out okay in the end. But to start with, I had the expected concerns that I'm going to step away from the business. I'm going to need to take a good 3 months out and not be client facing, not be doing any sales meetings or anything like that, not being there to manage the team. So, oh my God, the business is going to collapse around me, and I'm going to come back to a non-existent company. And so, I had all the kind of fears that I guess most people would have in that situation. But I put a lot of time and effort into the time that I was pregnant, making sure that I had the team prepped. I recruited someone to come in and help with a lot of the duties that I had been performing within the business. So all of that was done well in advance. And it meant that whenever I did take the 3 months off, that I was actually surprisingly able to relax and focus on having a newborn and being a mum and really enjoying that experience. And when I came back to work 3 months later, everything was running just exactly as it was when I left, and it was all absolutely fine. So I was really fortunate and very grateful to have such an amazing team. They're all still with me today. So it's just continued to grow since then. So having that support and loyalty from the team really is what's helped things to run so smoothly.
So how big was the team when you first took Harrison?
I think there was 4 of us full time in the business, and then a number of freelance consultants. So we were in our office in Mayfair then at the time as well. So it was a small team, but sort of fairly high overheads. So there was still a lot of pressure to make sure that we were bringing in the right level of business, and obviously continuing to look after the clients as well to the standard that I had set. But that it all went fine, but it did require a lot of preparation beforehand.
And so there's probably quite a few people watching thinking 3 months is not a lot of time to give yourself off.
If you're British, it's not a lot of time. If you're American, people think that that's quite extended. So yeah, in America, they don't take very long for maternity leave. And to be honest, I could have taken longer if I felt the need or the want to, but Vida it's my first baby in so many ways, as you said. So I was really quite keen to get back to work. And when I came back, it wasn't like full throttle, leave my baby at home and then just, ignore it and then ignore him and then go back to work. I phased it back fairly gently. So I think I remember in my first week back at work, I worked from a coffee shop about half a mile away from my house because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel emotionally about leaving the baby because I hadn't left him at all yet. And so it meant that I could go home if I was feeling a bit anxious. So there was that phasing in period. And then for the first few months, I went back into the office 4 days a week and worked from home on a Friday. And I always made sure that I could leave at least 2 or 3 days at 5:30 so I could get home and make sure that I was there to do bath time and bedtime. So I had those discussions with my partner before I went back to work. What level of commitment did I want to maintain with being a mum versus running the business? So that was all set and agreed beforehand, and then we came up with a plan about, okay, how do we manage this so that I can go back to running the business in an efficient way and continuing to grow it whilst feeling like I'm also being a good mother at the same time.
I think it's brilliant because obviously you're a very organised person. I think it's great the way that you're kind of almost approaching sort of, it's that overlap, isn't it? That it's not a part of your job. It's like, but it becomes an extension. Okay, well, how can I make sure that I am, what are the requirements of me? What are the requirements I'm putting on myself? How can, what are my non-negotiables? Yeah. Bedtime, sort of. I think it's quite interesting to actually, and I mean, communication is obviously key. Sitting down and having that conversation. You've obviously got a very supportive partner. I mean, what other things would you say have been sort of vital to making sure that you could manage both roles at once? Because you obviously, you're managing them really well.
Yeah, being able to delegate. And that, I think it was only from having Harrison that I really learned the value of delegating for the first time. And actually looking back, I realised that I was potentially maybe a little bit of a control freak in the early years of the business. So I wore every hat that you could possibly wear within the business. I was doing bits of PR, bits of marketing, bits of sales, management, blah, blah, blah. And actually recognising that when a business gets to a certain stage or is a certain level of being established, that you need to just get rid of some of those hats and pass them on to other people and let them take over. Because I was creating a bottleneck within the business by trying to do too much and too many different things at once. So by being pregnant and by having a baby and coming back and not being able, like I physically could not work 80 to 100 hours a week, which is what I had been doing before. I was forced to delegate and to say, okay, I'm not doing any more sales meetings, or I'm not doing any more like certain roles within marketing, etc. And so I passed quite a lot of responsibility onto other members of the team, and because they had more focus and more responsibility to do that job well, it actually helped the business to grow. So my team were actually quite excited when I told them I was pregnant again, because they thought, okay, well, this means the business is going to flourish again as a result.
That's a really interesting lesson. And I think, I think a lot of female founders are in the same boat as you, because when you start up, you have to wear all those hats.
Yeah.
At what point do you give them up? And because, I think a lot of people are quite A-type personalities who set up companies and, and they're so used to just doing stuff themselves and not delegating and, and just, it's easier if I just do it myself rather than explain to someone else what I need doing, that actually it's brilliant to have that situation where you just can't do it anymore. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to have to see, sink or swim. And it, it sounds like your guys really swam with it, which is brilliant. And to have, to see the success of that, to still have the same team, 2 years on, and to have that as a point that they really enjoyed in the journey is brilliant. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So what are you going to change this time? Are you going to change anything? Are you going to take longer on mat leave this time? Have you got any?
I think I'm going to aim to take the 3 months off again, and then see how I feel in September whenever I'm due to go back. The team's a bit bigger now. We're much more structured, more established than we were 2 years ago. So I now feel in a position where I could take longer off if I wanted to. But I also really love what I do. So I think it's a nice part of motherhood as well, to have that period of time at home and looking after a newborn. But I think with most mothers, you end up spending most of your time at home. You don't have makeup on, and and it's a lovely earthy experience to have. But it's nice to have that contrast of, right, I need to get up and I need to put my makeup on, high heels on and go into work, and you feel like you're engaging your brain again. And then you really embrace being a mum when you get home. And So I quite enjoyed having the balance between the two, and I didn't feel guilty about it as well. Sometimes when I was pregnant and planning the 3 months maternity, and I thought, are people going to criticize me for going back to work after 3 months? And I thought, well, I've got a little boy. He's the most amazing little boy, and he loves me dearly, and he knows I'm his mom, and I spend every weekend with him, and I put him to bed 2 or 3 nights a week, and I spend an hour with him every morning before I go to work. And so I'm very proud of the balance that I have, and the way I've been able to juggle both things, which is the same for a lot of mums in London who are business owners.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think when I look at some of my friends who are not business owners who've gone on maternity leave and it's become a very fixed amount of time, and then they've tried the reintegration into the workplace, and the framework hasn't always worked for them. They've maybe said they're going to go back full time and then actually been very quickly asking if they can do 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Whereas actually I think that's one of the great things about being a business owner is that you have that flexibility. So, if you go back after 3 months and think, do you know what, I need it to be 3 days a week, not 4.
Yeah.
Or actually, do you know what, I need a bit more of them to be challenged more mentally, so I'd like to up to 4 days a week from 3. Then you've got a lot more flexibility than a lot of employees would have, which is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, even now, I'm much more of a night owl than I am a morning person. So I typically start work at about 9:30 in the morning, which also gives me time to wake up, and it gives me time to spend time with Harrison in the morning, and I'm not sort of having to deal with the typical rush hour getting into work. It's normally a little bit quieter getting in, and then on the days that I do leave at 5:30 as well, I get into the office and I work from the minute I sit down until the minute I leave. And I'm quite happy to do that. I don't need long lunch breaks or things like that. But and then there's 1 or 2 days a week I'll stay for maybe 12, 13 hours in the office. And I love being there when the rest of the team have gone home, and I can just sit and focus and get so much done. But that suits my rhythm, it suits my style, and it's nice for me as a business owner to be able to have that flexibility to follow my own intuition and follow my own rhythm. I do a little bit of work sometimes at the weekend when Harrison's napping as well, but that's because I want to, and I like keeping on top of things and getting things done. When you really love the business that you run and you love your career, then it all blurs into what's a job and what's a hobby, and it's just driven by your own passion anyway. So then it's just about being efficient. How many hours do I have in the day? How much time can I dedicate to being a mum? How much time can I dedicate to running a business? And let's just be super structured and organised with how it's all put together.
Well, because it's a balancing act, and people always talk about it as being a balancing act, but I think as long as you're controlling that balancing, and it sounds like you've really shaped that balance to work for you. You know what you want, you know what works best for you, which patterns of work best for you. I think that seems to be what I'm getting from what you're saying. So
yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer. Do what is best for you and your business and your family. And
yeah. And some people want to get in like a full-time nanny or childminder to live in. That's fine as well if somebody wants to work longer hours and have a family. So you're absolutely right. There's no right or wrong answer, but one of the real benefits of running your own business is that you get to call the shots, and you can do it in effectively in whatever way that you want. And quite often when you're in an employment environment, you don't get, yes, you get your long maternity leave, but whenever you come back to work, then you realise that if your employers don't allow you to work flexibly or to cut your days or whatever, then you feel like this choice has been taken away from you. And I've heard that from a number of my friends who've had children, where they feel under a lot of pressure to go back to work full time, and they're not allowed to cut their hours to part time, and things like that. And that's whenever I recognise how fortunate I am that I can work as much or as little as I want, essentially. And so that was a massive benefit of running my own business that I didn't really anticipate when I first set it up.
Do you think having now been in that situation and as a mum yourself now, do you think it's changed as an employer? It's changed your attitude to what you would offer your staff in terms of maternity packages? I mean, have you had any of your staff go off on maternity leave yet?
I've had, one of my employees. She's got a girl who's three 3 now. That's her second. So she had her first just before she started with us. And yeah, there's the whole maternity thing, but also how you deal with childcare, family issues when you're back at work. So that's the other thing that you don't really anticipate. You don't appreciate happens until you've had a child. Is the phone calls from the nursery so that your child has got a fever and needs to be picked up, or is has to go to the doctors to get some more jabs, or things like that. And you need to be able to give yourself as a mother or your employees the flexibility to attend to personal situations like that. Okay, so if you need to go and collect your child from nursery because they're ill, well, that's obviously the most important thing in your life right now, that takes top priority. So it's important as an employer to allow your staff to know that they can go and deal with things like that, and they'll make up the hours or whatever way it's sorted out. But you have to be supportive of these needs, because that is, fundamentally it's going to be top of their priority list anyway.
So for anyone who might be watching this, who's a mum who is thinking about founding their own business, or is in the process of creating their first baby in the form of a business, but then is worrying that, okay, well, I'm of a certain age and I know I'm going to have kids soon, what would your main tips for them be, like, for anyone panicking about that balancing act?
Just recognise the fact that there are millions of women all over the world who have set up businesses and then gone on to have babies within the next few years, or have set up businesses with a young family, and have done it very successfully. So there's lots of information out there, lots of biographies, etc., that people can read for inspiration, and blogs, etc., and just to recognise it is possible. We're women, we multitask, this is what we're good at, and you can just decide beforehand, paint a picture in your mind of how it would all work, and how you think you would balance things out, and almost work backwards in terms of, okay, well, this is the lifestyle I want, and this is the family situation I want, and how I would want childcare, etc., and working back from there. Okay, when do I set up my business, and how is that going to look, and how will I balance the time between motherhood and business, so at least you're focusing in the right direction, and then you can work the rest out as you go along. But also to look at the people that you have around you. So your partner, obviously the more supportive your partner is, then the better, and I'm very fortunate in that position. But looking at family members as well, communicate to them what your plans are, and see who is able to help, whether it's the brother-in-law or the grandparents of the child or whatever, and also then deciding, okay, well, am I going to run a business that I'm just going to run on my own, and be self-employed, or am I going to grow a team and have an office, and how will I be able to support that, or how will they be able to support me whenever it gets to the stage of starting a family. So there's all those things to think about, but the more you sort of plan it out in a way that you would do maybe a business plan, and just visualise how it will look, and then the rest of the structure will just come from there.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. I think it's been really, really helpful, and I hope everyone at home who's watching has found it as helpful as I have.
Good.
Thanks,
Thank
Rachel.
you.